Hello, welcome back. It's good to be back with you. Today we are discussing patience with Saint Therese of Lisieux in our segments, I guess, on the early spiritual life. So we were talking a lot about temptations with Saint Bernard and Saint Teresa of Avila. Moving to a new section with Saint Therese of Lisieux, Doctor of the Church, amazing saint. And she's going to be talking about a lot of different stuff. So we'll get into that. The first thing she's going to talk about is what she calls waiting. And I use the word patience. So in the early spiritual life, but just probably, I mean, not even probably, just throughout life, throughout the whole spiritual life, even not in the spiritual life, there is an invaluable virtue and a process of mortification that revolves around waiting and patience, patience being the virtue. And you will hear about this so much from the saints. If you read any of the saints, they will always circle back to this virtue of patience. And what Saint Therese talks about in the spiritual life, talking about her own life, is how much God used waiting to mortify her and to purify her intentions and her to help her grow in virtue and destroy vice. So this is probably one of the biggest things you'll hear from just anyone if you talk about spiritual things or if you talk about even just regular life things. We as human beings, we don't like to wait for things. We want the thing and we want it now. We don't want it over an extended period of time. So if we can come to understand that God does desire to give us good things, and it might not even be the thing that we think we need or the thing that we want, but God, it seems from my experience and from what I'm reading from the saints, is God will often use this purification of making you wait for something. And honestly, one of the big reasons, like this is just me speculating now, this is not Saint Therese. One of the reasons God uses this is because even the thing that we desire, even if in of itself is good, we're actually not ready for that thing yet. And if we had the thing now, it would destroy us or it would not go well. And I think for myself, I've seen that a lot where there's something I wanted, when I was younger or, was first becoming Catholic. And now I look back on those things I wanted and it's like, wow, God moved great because if I had gotten that thing at that time in my early 20s or something, it would have not gone well at all. But so that's that. So waiting on things is actually, it's not that God doesn't want to give you stuff, but he's always working for your salvation. So he needs to mortify you. And it's crazy because it seems he would do this to people even that are not involved with the spiritual life, making them wait for things. And then people that are not maybe in tune, praying, in conversation with God, that's what those people that will take things, even though God's like kind of trying to make them wait on it and it'll destroy them. It's not a good thing, but I could maybe think of an example. Maybe person really desires to help people in a certain way or something, be charitable in a certain way, but this way of being charitable involves, vast amounts of responsibility or money, but they're impatient with it. I'm using a very like religious concept, but you don't have to use that. And then they obtain that position or that power or that authority or the means to do this thing, and they don't wield it very well because they were not prepared. They did not go through a waiting period, a mortification period, a preparation period for that. So the big thing Saint Therese wants, and she had struggles with this too, and it's funny. I know it was probably a huge struggle for her, but like one thing was that there was a delay in her being able to, I think, enter the convent at 15 of like 3 months. It might have been her end of her novitiate or something. I can't remember, but there was a delay of like 3 months, which honestly, like it doesn't sound like a lot. It's like you're gonna have the rest of your life to be in there, which is kind of funny. But she talks about even that waiting that 3 months because she just wanted to get into the convent, into the Carmelite convent. and she had to wait, but she actually understood that eventually she understood that waiting was actually beautiful, and it was a time of refinement, of purification. So I know it's not easy to hear, probably better for you to learn it from Saint Therese, but if you really desire something or you think God wants you to have something and you're not getting it yet, you can make it very powerful by trying to focus and grow in this virtue of patience, this suffering in the waiting. And if you get really good at this, I'm like, this has got to be at the center of like inner peace. If you know that God's going to give you good things and you're like, well, I'm not getting it now, but I know in time God will do what's best. That has to be like gold in the spiritual life. I think just in a if you think about it for even a second. But doesn't mean it's not hard, but that is the thing that we'll have to face. And the more we understand it and the more we grow in that virtue, I think the more expansive and the more enriching our spiritual life will be. So very, very important. Waiting as mortification, as God preparing us, and growing in that virtue of patience. So that's that. That's the spiritual life subject for today. And then I wanted to talk about a different subject. I'm going to call it common sense. So I've been realizing a lot of arguments or discussions with people for probably like maybe 5 years, and even with myself talking to people. As you learn more, there's like a temptation to constantly be relying on, I don't know, data, studies, statistics, philosophical arguments, theological arguments, arguments from authority, all this stuff, which is all great, and I support all of that. But one thing I've been trying to consciously be more aware of and just be more straightforward about is the idea of common sense. And in our world today, there's a lot of, well, in America, in our world today, I mean, all over the world, but in America, I'll speak of specifically, there's a lot of like crazy stuff. You could probably call it gaslighting, where it's like something is very obviously true, and people will say something like, you'll say, I won't come up with an exact example. Maybe I'll try. I'll be thinking as I'm talking. But someone will, you'll state something that you think is obvious, and someone will say, do you have a study to back that up? Or like, what in science shows you that that's true? And usually people will, because like science and stuff like that is just worshipped, even if it's something obvious, like let's say like, oh, there's two sexes, there's male and female, there's no more than that. And then if you said, I'm not saying this has actually happened, but for an example, it's like if you got in an argument with someone and you said, "Oh, there's only two sexes, obviously," and the person's like, "Oh, did you get that from like a study or something like that?" Or if you said, another example is like, "Men and women are different," and you said that to someone and they said like, "Oh, how do you prove that?" And for me, I mean, there's things that people point to prove that. I'm fixing my scapular. There are things that people point to prove that stuff scientifically, with data, with witness experience, whatever it is. But I am more and more inclined, largely because I've met a lot of disingenuous people that are not just honest about rationality or or logic. But I think it might be even be more effective to just be like, and this might not always work, but like that's just common sense. Like if you can't, and if you can't realize that, like what could you say more to someone at that point? And it almost like belittles the statement to like stumble and be like, oh, this study, that study. It's like I don't think that person, the person might not just be genuine in wanting to know the truth. I'm thinking about it now. I mean, it's a hard thing to say to people because people will obviously be like, well, you have to prove it in evidence, and I agree. But I think sometimes we just need to be like, no, this is just right or this is just wrong, and everyone knows that. And I don't need to point to like a study or something. Or you can do a little bit of reasoning and a little bit of like kind of a logical step by step thing that doesn't have to do with like, oh, I have the data or I have this like study to show you. You can just be like, no, because of this, this, and this, or just do like a syllogism or something to show that, yeah, this is, even if it's not like 100% shown with pure logic that it's true, it's like there's no reason for someone to be doubtful or skeptical about the thing you're saying. Hopefully that makes sense. Because I think a lot of people in these arguments and stuff, people are just trying to win often. And I've done that too. Especially if you're watching TV or on social media and stuff, a lot of people there's not actual debate and argument going on. And I think with common sense you can realize that if someone's not recognizing a common sense position or they're ignoring it entirely, you could be like, this is not even worth it because we're just operating on two different entire planes here. Anyway, that's what I've been thinking about. Maybe I've just been reading a lot of GK Chesterton. Um, but yeah, I think I'm gonna lean more into that because some of the stuff today is just so ridiculous. And I think we just need, it's not about the argumentation, the intellectual, and maybe we've been like just emphasizing that so much. A lot of it I think is just like heart and willing to stand behind a right position and die for it. It's not like the other person is like unaware of the intellectual arguments for and against what you're saying. A lot of times, honestly, I think it's a moral thing. Most times people aren't able to recognize the truth is not because they're they're not understanding the intellectual argument. They're not they don't want to follow the moral precept that they either think might be true or they know is true. I know that was true for myself when I was younger, maybe still today. I would hope that I've grown in that, but I do see that a lot. Or whether it's just pride, someone just doesn't want to be wrong, so they'll just refuse to see common sense, or they'll refuse to acknowledge your common sense point. So I see that a lot too. Just that's what I was thinking about. I don't know how helpful that will be, but I think as this world gets crazier, I think you'll be finding more and more Christians, more and more people of goodwill will have to just be like, there's nothing I can like show you in a study, but if you're going to throw me in jail for this, I have to just stand on business. And like subjects that would involve jail is like pro-choice, pro-life stuff, um, foreign foreign invasion of a country stuff, just being honest about what you are experiencing, what you're witnessing, and what is truly happening in different systems of government, corruption, anything moral, um, crime, criminality, in the judicial system. There's another thing I'm thinking of, but I can't remember. But in those areas, you're just gonna have to be like, this is right, this is wrong. There's not a study that can show it. It's common sense, and we should all know it. Killing of innocent people, which that's actually not maybe not as common sense, depending on your first principles. But anyway, that's what I want to talk about. Let me know if you have any questions on that. I don't know if I'm going to go into that more, but that's just what I was thinking about today. But patience, waiting, good mortification. Patience is a great virtue. Be working on that. Be thinking about that. Hopefully, everyone started the Sacred Heart devotion today. If you do not start today, you can still start later. I think it's like up to a certain day in July is like the end point. So you don't have to. I encourage everyone to do it with the bishops. So if you haven't, do it. But even if you don't see it the day of, start it the next day or whatever day you're on, as long as before the specific day in July. I can't remember what the day is. But anyway, that's all we have tonight on this beautiful Wednesday. That's it. Yeah. God bless you. God keep you. God be with you. And I will see you on the next one. Good night.